with men in particular, a lot of times they want to solve things through logic. And I think that's one of the things I have to work with a lot of, that if we go through emotion, logic will make so much sense. But if we start with logic, we will get stunted, blocked by emotion every time.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It's a beautiful Friday here in Dallas, and I am very excited about today's guest. We have a very well-respected clinician on the show today, Michael Ashenfelter, licensed professional counselor, supervisor. Michael, hello. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited about this too. I've heard so much about your work, had the pleasure of meeting you quite a while back at this point, but I'm excited to learn from you today and let our listeners hear about the things you have to say about relationships and stuff. But I would love to kickstart this episode introducing you, because there's so much about you that I think is just, influences who you are as the clinician you are right now today, and will color our conversation today as well. So Michael is a licensed professional counselor and a supervisor dedicated to providing compassionate care centered in the ideals of fostering emotional wellness and nurturing stronger relationships for couples and individuals. Love it. Michael has a Master's of Arts in Counseling from Dallas Theological Seminary, a Bachelor of Arts and Sciences in Human Development and Family Studies from Texas Tech University. And Michael is the president of the North Texas EFT steering team. He's committed in this group to advancing the practice of emotionally focused therapy in the community and beyond. And so Michael, specializing in emotionally focused therapy, which I know is just an incredible way of working with clients, is a very highly effective, evidence-based approach that helps couples, individuals, and families repair, strengthen, and deepen their emotional connections. Michael also integrates mindfulness, acceptance practices, and a humanistic approach to empower clients to regain control and find peace in their lives. Michael believes in advocating for his clients and creating a safe, nurturing environment where they can explore and heal. His approach is rooted in fostering secure attachments and empowering individuals to maximize their potential through supportive therapeutic relationships. Outside of the practice, Michael enjoys tapping into his creative, playful side by entertaining friends and family, mixology, and cooking elaborate meals. What is an example of an elaborate meal? I gotta know.
Oh, yeah. My most recent one last Sunday was a beef Wellington.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
Nice. Did it turn out how you wanted it to be?
Turned out perfect. It was so great.
That's fantastic. That's great. So a couple more things. Michael has an interest in understanding the human condition through the lens of attachment theory. And Michael's newest adventure is co-hosting his podcast, Cocktail Therapy, where he gets to play and combine the hobbies of mixology, pop culture, and nerding out on attachment theory. And we're definitely going to link to that podcast so that anybody who's interested in that can go have a great time with you over there.
Yeah, sounds great.
Michael, thanks again for joining me. I can tell, just in all that I just shared, you are well-educated, you know a lot about what we're about to talk about, relationships, and specifically a little bit about men and relationships, right? But before all that, maybe share with us a little bit about your journey into therapy.
Sure. Yeah, it's always funny to hear your own bio. It's like, oh, wow, I sound way more important than I am. But my journey in therapy, I think, is really goofy, actually.
Love it.
I did come from a divorced family. And as a kid, I had the thought of, instead of like being a fireman or policeman, I did have the thought of like, I would like to be a therapist. And that kind of never went away. But when I went to school, I originally went as a vocal performance major. And realized quickly after, I'd say quickly, 2 years, that I'm not gonna make any money at this, and I'm not that great. So I did what any logical college student did, and I went where all the cute girls were. which was in human development family studies at Texas Tech. So a lot of my friends from ministry I was in were there, and I was like, that sounds interesting. But I remember the last day of one of the exit classes, they were like, we were in a school of human sciences, and it had like dietitians, restaurant hotel management,
Mhm.
and then like early childhood development and human studies. And so they were all going around talking about what they could do. And I raised my hand. I'm like, what can I do with this HGFS degree? And they're like, well, like you can open a daycare, or you can go into human resources. I was like, I don't want to do any of those.
You're like, why didn't you tell me this when I got here?
Right. And so they're like, so you can go on and get your master's, or your doctorate in counseling. And I was like, well, there we go. So I started my search there. So it wasn't until late. I'm like, oh, it's all fitting. Like this is early calling, I guess, from my life. And, ended up going to DTS, or Dallas Theological Seminary. And that was just based on, I had a couple of mentors who were graduates from there. And I found out DTS had a counseling program. That's an integrative approach. So it wasn't just pure biblical counseling. There's an integrative actual study of psychology with a biblical worldview. And that appealed to me. And so went there, and rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, it really is. It's so interesting how those formative college years, it can feel so like untethered. Like, what am I doing? Like, but I hear that like constant thread for you since you were young of like this interest in counseling, and that you eventually ended up back there. So that's really cool. Where did it come to be for you, the specialization of couples? Because that's definitely your realm, and not necessarily what like all the LPC focused, studies would be about, right?
Right. Yeah. And honestly, if I'd known what I know now, I would have likely gone back and gotten either an LMFT or an LCSW track, just with a broader scope. But couples work came really at the end of my Texas Tech years, and just our studies. And I had 2 classes in marriage there, and it just fascinated me. I didn't do well in them, honestly, because it was so confusing. But I think that I liked the challenge. I think that's what continues now. With couples, it is really challenging work. But one, I love the challenge, but 2, I feel like I have more to work with. Because I'm not getting to experience just the self-report, but I'm getting to experience how it's being received and how they're playing back with one another. And so I feel like I just have more to work with, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, and, I know this about you, but I'm hoping you can maybe share a little bit with listeners, just like what EFT is, that approach from your perspective. And I mentioned, when I introed you, like you're part of the steering committee for EFT, and maybe even tell us a little bit about what you do in that role.
Yeah. So EFT, I came to later actually in my career. I'm almost 20 years into my career now, which I can't believe. I feel so old. I know. I'm still a millennial. I'm right on the edge. But with my history at Texas Tech, which in the early childhood development was heavily drenched in attachment science, and marrying it with just some of the practical things I had at DTS, I went to one of Sue Johnson's presentations here in Dallas, and it just worked. It just made sense. I'm like, okay, the world, like it makes sense again. Because I used to practice imago therapy, which is like, it's not that's wrong. It's just what I found with it, in that it's active reflective listening. I feel statements, avoid using you. All great communication skills. But what I found is couples kept coming back in like 3 months after we had wrapped up, and they're still fighting on the same topic nonetheless. And what EFT really introduced to me, like the idea of the focus on emotion, is that when emotion arises, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the prefrontal cortex accessibility to go, Michael said I should talk about how I feel right now. And when emotion's there, we're just like, screw you, buddy. Like, let's go. And so that's where emotionally focused therapy, where I connected with it and found that we can make change when we slow down and attend to the emotion.
Mhm.
And part of, I think, what we're going to talk about here today is with men in particular, a lot of times they want to solve things through logic. And I think that's one of the things I had to work with a lot of, that if we go through emotion, logic will make so much sense. But if we start with logic, we will get stunted, blocked by emotion every time.
Uh-huh.
And so EFT has a way of allowing us to do that, to go in that order so that we can become unstuck.
Yeah, I love that you just described it that way, because it is kind of this, specific order through which you are leaning into these things. And it's not that other modalities maybe aren't good in their own right. They have plenty to offer, but
Yeah.
I've often looked at it that way, even for myself studying relational life therapy, which I feel is headed in the same direction, but from a very different way. It's like the emotion for you is the on-ramp to getting where you need to go. Whereas with some other models, it's like they're sort of holding off and getting into that later. And yeah, I'm always I have the FOMO, because I'm like, man, I just missed that EFT bandwagon.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I were looking for a couples therapist for myself, knowing what I know about everything now, I would go to an EFT therapist first. I
Love-
really would.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we know that it works. So
Yeah.
that's very exciting. But yeah, so the steering committee, what's your role with that? I mean, president of the steering community, what does that entail?
Sounds so fancy, right?
I keep saying
Honestly,
that you're
yeah. Honestly, it is just kind of steering a wheel. I find myself in leadership roles, not because I just like to do. And so it was offered to me because I just got involved and engaged with the community, and it's just like-minded people, and we offer trainings that are specifically focused in emotionally focused therapy. And so my role as the president in this community is to connect with different EFT trainers throughout the nation, bring them in to teach and expand our skills in EFT. So like we have one coming up in June with one of my mentors, Dr. Rebecca Jorgensen. And she's going to be focusing on working with shame within the couple dynamic, and how really if we go into shame too quickly and too fast, it'll block and derail the whole program. But really recognizing shame as an adaptive way in which we're trying to connect, but it just blocks us. So she'll be coming to do a whole 2-day seminar on that, with integration with some polyvagal stuff and trauma.
Oh, very cool. Well, and for you, Michael, like, how would you say being in a role like that, where you're kind of pulling the community together, teaching clinicians this model, like, how does that color how you practice with your couples?
How's it color? Honestly, sometimes they can put too much pressure on me.
Wow.
Because I feel like I have to get it right and I have to be perfect. And so I actually have to work against that. Kind of relax into, I've been a part of this community for, goodness gracious, almost 10 years. And so I can relax on what I know. I've done all the training. But I do kind of have to remind myself, I have nothing to prove here, but just to be in the room and be present. Yeah, and lean on what I've gained over the years. But yeah, sometimes it can be, there's a pressure. And I don't actually, my wife gets on to me all the time. I don't really tell people that I'm president of the community too often.
Yeah.
I don't have it advertised anywhere. I think the first time I've ever written it is actually writing to you on the bio. So yeah, I sometimes even just forget.
But that's awesome. Like, I so love and appreciate that you're sharing the humanity in that for you, because I can relate. It's, and not that that's the point, right? But I think so many people listening will relate to that. It's like so many people continue pushing themselves, and we grow and we train and we develop. And I think that's a sign of that's emotional maturity, right? To not lead with those pieces necessarily. So appreciate that. So thinking about men in therapy, that's kind of why I reached out to have this conversation with you. It's something that you work with often in therapy. You see a lot of couples, you work with some men in therapy as well. And when we talked before this show, you had described yourself as like a solid landing place for men who have maybe struggled with therapy in the past, especially those that have maybe worked with the female therapist and felt like they weren't seen or heard. Maybe they didn't have a voice. So can you share a little more about that dynamic and what that's like for you?
Yeah, I really like being a safe landing space. I don't think I'm anything like special or doing anything different. And that's not true. How do I say that? I want to think through this better. I used to think like, when couples come in from other therapists, it's really easy to go like, oh, what were they doing? And kind of be judgy. But I think over the years of maturity, it's like, oh no, each couple is where they are and they have their own experience. And it's not necessarily the therapist. But they do have an experience where most common is they felt unheard or ganged up upon. And I don't know if that's necessarily by other female therapists. But there is a dynamic, and I think I just hold them coming into the room differently and try to really align with them quickly that whatever's going on, whatever they're doing, I truly believe is an adaptive strategy at trying to stay connected in this relationship. It may look the opposite way, but for some reason, somehow, this strategy that maybe others have judged or told you need to be better at is actually you working really hard on trying to save and be in this relationship. And so I think that what helps align me. I mean, it's not like I'm a big masculine man, because I'm not. I love to cook and make cocktails and arrange flowers. So like it's not my machismo that's like connecting with them. Right. I think it's more just an acceptance of them that's really making a safe landing space.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. And we don't love generalizations in our field, right? We can't lump any one person into this, idea that we think is just all encompassing. But that being said, for men, do you feel like there are these generalizations made that they're maybe more likely to be withdrawn or walled off, or more anxious and insecure, maybe even boundaryless? Like, do you feel like you see sort of one kind of relational persona come in with men that you work with? Or is it kind of, all across the spectrum sort of thing?
I think it is all across the spectrum. At the same time, there are some recurrences that happen frequently. And I think with men, it would be that they're more in the dismissive-avoidant category of attachment styles. So that idea that they do become shut down, they deactivate, they pull from emotion.
Yeah.
And I think it's changing. Like when we talk about the millennial age gap, I think that's changing a bit. I think older generations, the men are much more in the avoidant camp. But I think that's also due to how we raise men. And so that avoidance strategy is a response to how they engage with their significant caregiver. I think that there's really common pattern, especially in a U.S. Dynamic in that older generation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, that sounds really relevant. And I know just perspective from my team over here is like, we see that too. It's like, what's the origin story and where did this once really make sense for this person, man or, otherwise, right? Like to learn to do this adaptive move. Because I suppose that really is it. Like it wouldn't be happening if there was no purpose. We're too smart of a species to sit around doing stuff that makes no sense.
Right. So, I mean, if we're securely attached and we have the flexibility to know that if I need you, I can reach out for you, you respond and engage with me. If we had that in our bones, then we don't have these insecurities that pop up that say, run from emotion or attack emotion. We just get to thrive. We get to play.
Yeah.
But often cases we don't get that. So
Yeah. Don't get it and then don't know how to give it to ourselves as adults, really. So, like, kind of reflecting specifically in on withdrawn or more avoidant men in therapy, like, what does that maybe look like to you in a relational context when you're working with a couple? Like,
yeah. So through the EFT lens, there's actually a strategy and some step work into that, and that we want to work and re-engage the withdrawer first. So in EFT, they call it withdrawer. It's the dismissive-avoidant. We want to engage them first, and that's so that when the opposing partner, that's usually anxiously attached, or the pursuer, when they share their vulnerability, if I can get them to re-engage and do that work with them first, they're able to hold the anxiety of their partner. But if I attempt to work with the anxious attachment too soon before strengthening that withdrawer, they'll share their anxiety and just drop them. And it'll just repeat, because it's not because they don't care. They just don't know how. And they don't have that muscle memory to do so yet. So they'll unintentionally drop them, but then just reactivate the wound that they're coming in for. So that's one of the main focuses. I try to identify that, whether it's the male or female. Again, usually the male.
I am kind of curious, though, if I can, because I feel like I would identify, if my husband listens to this, he'd be like, yes, that's correct. But I'm more of the anxious pursuer, right? And I know that can look a bit escalated at times. Like, so is it not a piece of the puzzle to first, like, hey, kind of like calm that person down before doing that work with the withdrawer? Because I just feel like, sometimes the pursuer can be a little scary to the withdrawn partner.
Absolutely. Oh, they can be terrifying.
Yeah.
Part of the work, you don't just ignore the anxious pursuer. Part of the work is validating them. So you're not doing the deep work, but a lot of what we need on that anxious side is validation. And that validation will soothe us, quiet us. Doesn't take the pain away, but it, oftentimes what I'll share with a client is I'll reflect what they're saying. I'll try to match their energy. And then I'll gently say, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that. I need to go do some work over here with your partner. And I really want to make sure we come back to this. And so as long as I faithfully come back to it and show that I'm listening and validating, that they will be grounded enough to let me do some of the work.
Yeah. So it's kind of that, hey, I see you there. Hang on, because and I'm sure it takes some couples, especially ones that are deep into it, a minute to trust you and to trust that you've got, Yeah, for sure. So, like, attachment theory, especially EFT that you use, how does that help clients that are struggling with that vulnerability and like emotional expression?
I would say it's probably one of the hardest things I do. But so well worth it once we get into it. To me, I kind of think of, what is that movie? Is it Good Will Hunting with Robin Williams?
Yeah.
It's that scene with him and Matt Damon, and he's like, it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay. And he just stayed present and stayed consistent. And so with the emotion, it's not about just kind of a one-time observational look and analytical look and describing like, oh, this is your emotion, this is what's happening. So like the feelings chart, that's a great thing. It's a great way to help identify. But for an EFT, the work is not just being able to identify. It's truly like, oh, can you feel it? Can you feel it right here, right now? And part of that work is just staying with the emotion. And clients will oftentimes try to pull away, especially if we're working with avoidant. They'll distract and go away. They'll make a joke. And it's just about consistently coming back. And one of the ways that Sue Johnson, the founder of EFT, says it is that you're just massaging the amygdala. every time you repeat it. And so she's encouraging in our work that a minimum of 5 times of repetition before you move on. And as the client, I think it feels really good. As the clinician, I feel like I'm being repetitive and redundant. But it's not until I do the practice, I'm like, no, like you can see it work. Like it's crazy. And you see them just settle into the emotion and really start to embody it.
Yeah, because I was wondering about that when you said you're asking clients, can you actually feel it? And so many people come into therapy and they have lost that connection to really the physiology in their emotions, So I'm hearing it's like that repetition that really allows them to kind of open that door. But do you find that some people are just like so disconnected that is there any part of this work for you that's like truly helping them get connected to their body and like that felt experience?
Yeah, I think that direct question of like, where are you feeling it? And especially if I know if I'm anticipating some resistance, I'll let them know. I'm like, I know this can be a goofy question. But if you could tell me where your body feels that. So if it's sad, like where do you feel sadness in your body? And it's not uncommon. They're like, I don't know. And then I'll just explain, I'll do some psych ed with them. It is really hard for our mind and body to be incongruent. So if you're having trouble coming up with the emotion in your mind and from a cognitive standpoint, and I tell them like, it's kind of like a cheat code. If we can go to your body, it'll reveal it. So I'm not looking for the specific exact knowing. I just want to know, like, is there pressure? Is there a flutter? Is there tightness? Do you feel heavy? Like, what is it? And I'll just kind of move around in it with them. And with avoidant, you have to be really patient. Because the risk is if I come in hot and I'm like, where do you feel it? What's going on? How? Where? Your shoulders here, there. I just became their partner. I just became the pursuer. And so I'm activating all their reactive system, their attachment system. And so they're just going to shut down.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we're working with this dismissive avoidant. I'm kind of looking off. I'm not looking directly at them. I'm doing a lot of wondering. I'm making a lot of room as not put pressure. I'm like, this isn't a test. This isn't you're not going to get it right or wrong. It's just, what would it be like? So yeah.
And like, is the dismissive in dismissive avoidant because of that relational component of like, they're avoidant in themselves, therefore like they're going to be dismissive of others? Like, is that where that comes from? Or
it's a both and. It's a dismissive of, I think of it more of it's dismissive of emotion in self and other. Because a dismissive avoidant had to dismiss their own feelings to get their needs met by their caregiver. And so emotions aren't safe within themselves or the other. They dismiss that, they dysregulate. And one way to think about it is they downregulate, where the anxious attachment upregulates. So we're downregulating, we're dismissing, we're pushing down emotion, containing, doing a lot. That's one thing I want to make clear, though, with dismissive. It doesn't mean they don't feel. They actually feel greatly. Like they are feeling. You often see in dismissive avoidant, and a lot of men, they look like they don't care on the outside. They can look cool, calm, and collected. But there is anger, there is rage, there is temper, there is strong emotion that is deeply contained because they're afraid of it. They're afraid if they let it out, you're going to go away. And they're afraid of themselves and their own emotion. And so they're just containing all of it.
Yeah. That feels pretty huge to just kind of sit on for a sec because I definitely have a glimpse of what that can look like relationally when a couple's come in and they're just on the brink or like at the height of just such disconnect. And that other partner, opposite of what you just described, is just like, why don't you feel?
Right.
And
they start doing things like, oh, you must be on the spectrum. And
No.
or sociopathic, or
I
I
mean,
get all sorts of labels.
true
Yeah.
too. I feel like a few years ago it was like narcissist,
Uh-huh.
and sure, that can be real, but I think can also be misplaced because what you're explaining right there, like it's just so deep rooted. The history goes back so far. Well, and you know, you frame avoidant attachment styles in a way that can actually feel less about gender and more about survival strategies. Can you maybe say a little more about that, like that avoidant role?
Yeah. It is. So that's what attachment is really about. Like the attachment system is, how did I get my needs met
Hmm.
when they were not accessible and available?
Hmm.
So over time, this pattern happens where we go to an adaptive strategy. And that really is not gendered, because
Hmm.
there's plenty of women who are avoidant. Uh,
Hmm.
but again, I think the way in which like our U.S. culture raises men,
Hmm.
raises boys, it leans to dismiss your emotions. Your emotions aren't safe. Your emotions aren't valued. Your emotions aren't wanted.
Hmm.
And so that can definitely create the survival strategy of, oh, to get you closer to me, or for us to be in relationship, I have to squash mine and your feelings.
Yeah.
And another adaptive strategy, one way to look at the attachment style, is the view of self and a view of other.
Hmm.
And an avoidant attachment, their combination is a positive view of self and a negative view of other.
Mm.
And so, like at the surface, that can look like a narcissist, right? Like this inflated view of self. It's not about an inflated view. It's about, I learned at a young age that to get my needs met, I have to go inward and on my own. And
Yeah.
so I can trust only in me to get my needs met.
Yeah.
The negative view of other isn't that other people are evil or bad. It's just they can't comfort me. They can't give me my need.
Right.
And so I don't rely on them. I only rely on me.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting thing because it can land people in front of you in your office that at least I've had this experience due to this childhood where that's the adaptation that was learned. They also became wildly successful.
Oh,
It's like
yes.
you can be a leader, you can be a business owner, you don't sweat the small shit and stuff like that
One.
because you just are a lone ranger kind of thing. And so how do you kind of work with men, but we can shift into like anybody too that have kind of taken on that role throughout their life and it's brought them these big wins? Does it make it difficult for them to trust like working on changing that or
Oh, absolutely. Well, yes and no. It does, in that you are going up against, hey, this has been like, look at me. I am at the top of my game.
Mhm.
And people
Mhm.
come to me, people trust me.
Right.
But what they run into is everyone trusts me, but my partner. And so it's like, what the hell? And then that's the entrance. It's like, yeah, because
Mm.
this isn't about your enoughness. They've already accepted you as enough. They want to be with you. So the performance game isn't really working anymore. They don't want your performance. They want your connection. And that's really hard. And I wouldn't be that direct, honestly, with them, especially at the beginning, because that's going to be too much to hear. It's going to be too overwhelming. They're going to automatically think, oh, I can't do that. I'm going to fail. And so they'll shut down.
Because it's just this foreign concept. It's like, what
Uh,
connection? How do you do
mhm.
that? What is that going to vulnerability, feelings?
No.
Right. So it's really quite more of this like subtle art to get into that space.
Yeah, yes. But I think what you're saying too is, if you can just validate,
Hmm.
oh, this makes so much sense. This is hard because
Hmm.
everything else is telling you this is what works.
Yeah.
And so then I might softly say, but right now, right here, you look over and you see your partner crying
Hmm.
and you don't know what to do. You're like, I keep trying. I keep doing this. I keep doing this. I wash the dishes. I think of this. I ask for sex politely. I don't know all this stuff. Like, if they go through their checklist of like, I am trying to be the best and good, and
Right.
it's not, she's still crying, or they're still
Right.
crying. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, because performance here isn't the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. Woof. It's a big one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I imagine for some people, it's like you kind of have to, like they say, hit rock bottom before it's
Right.
like, okay, fine, I'll listen. But I love that you're saying, like, with your approach, it's not necessarily just explaining this to somebody. It's like you're in that moment where you can even use the relationship in front of you to show, just to help them, I guess, be in that reality of, oof, like, this is not working. Yeah.
I love all your noises, actually. Like, those are great therapeutic approaches of just being like, oh,
Yeah.
wow. Like that, like,
Yeah.
if you don't do EFT, you should, because you'd be great at it.
You're talking about me right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to be in that space with the client and help them.
Yeah.
I don't know. You see that shift and you can kind of witness they just got it. They just felt something different there. We're on to something, you know. And surprise for those listening, it doesn't kill you, you know?
Right.
It really doesn't. But with like men, and, you know, we're over here in my neck of the woods really honing in on millennial men. Compared to previous generations, like, what do you think they do bring to relationships that's different? Because I so agree with what you said earlier. Like, generationally, we've kind of made a lot of movement. And I really think like men in our generation just already present a bit differently than maybe 1 to 2 generations ago. So yeah, what do you think they bring to relationships and where do they still struggle?
Yeah, I think, and maybe it's just because I'm one of them. I think they have almost
what I want to do here, you know?
Yeah, I think they have more, actually more to struggle with, because it's like the millennial straddles, the millennial man, I think, straddles being parented by someone who was like, suck it up, knock the dirt off, don't cry, don't feel your feelings. But they also got in the late 90s, in their developmental years, they got, hey, it's okay to feel. It's, I want you to feel. And so I think we're struggling with like a mixed message that can be really confusing.
Yeah.
And so I think millennial men have a little more emotional attunement coming in than the older generation. And so that's one thing they got going for them. But there's still a classic struggle of, am I allowed to? I'm allowed to be vulnerable. Will you think I'm weak if I'm vulnerable? So, yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's like hitting me right now because I'm like, ooh, that is so true. Like, because the messaging has been there. And I'm thinking of that book, Generation Me. It's so good.
Yeah.
But it like shows these like worksheets children were given like in the 90s and whatever. And it's like, I'm so special, you know, self-esteem, like I'm worth it. And it's like, we're trying to promote this messaging. But what's really deep under the surface there still for men is like, but can I actually, or will I be, you know, attacked for this or judged or shamed? And yeah.
I don't know if it's because I'm right on the cusp of the millennial line. But I was told both. I was told, I will give you something to cry about. So stop crying. And encouraged to be sensitive and caring, especially to women.
Yeah.
And so like, there's this, it's confusing. Like, how do you do that? How do you not use your own emotion yet connect to someone else's emotion? It's really confusing.
Well, yeah, totally. And I'm wondering for you, like from this attachment-based lens that you really see relationships and growth through, like if you could paint this picture of like, because honestly, I don't know if you feel this way, but like being in the couples therapy space, I feel just transformed me as a parent. And I am a parent, so I have kids, but it's like shifted so much about kind of the foundation there and how I relate to my kids, because I kind of see this fuller thing in front of me. How would you describe, just kind of from your perspective, what's like the ideal way for a child to be raised in emotional attunement, you know?
Yeah, that's I think like the $1 million question. And I'll usually tell parents, because inevitably that's where my work goes. We will work on their emotional attunement and engagement and their connection and building earned security with one another. And when they'll come towards the end of our work, they'll bring in, how do we pass this on to our kids? Because they realize how they interact with one another impacts like how they respond. And so they know they're passing it on to their kids. And so I want to try to like ease everyone into it. Like, one, you're going to mess up. Like you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it perfect, but you're going to be so much more well-informed. And the great news about attachment is that repair is always available. It's never too late for repair. And in fact, where the bonding actually happens is in the repair. So that's where it's like, don't be afraid to mess up. We have a chance to get it right. We have a chance to recalibrate and come back.
I mean, I feel like I almost hear there, you need the mess up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite, Melanie Klein, who's a relational analyst, developmental. Her theory on depression is that we can't grow unless we go through depression. And so she had that developmental model where like infants go through their first depression when the parent doesn't come when they cry. It's just the first realization that I'm not the center of the world. That's the depression. We grow and we can tolerate, self-soothe. And then it just keeps happening again and again throughout life. That depression of like, oh crap, I'm not the center. And then the evolution of it, and we grow. I think that's so true with attachment, is that we bond, not because we did things perfect and never had ruptures. We bond because someone cared enough to repair with us. And so there's so much power in repair.
I imagine, that's like the source of building resilience, in oneself, and being able to trust in that. And, on the flip, when people have to endure just like ongoing neglect and it's just more of this limited thing that they got to feel, those repairs you're talking about, like even in those intense, ongoing painful experiences, you find that people can come through and build secure attachments.
Yeah. There's a person I follow, do you know Dr. Becky Goodenside? Yeah. Her TED Talk.
Over my social media.
Oh, yeah, right. Her TED Talk on repair was so good. And she just does a great experiential on that TED Talk that I usually refer some clients to.
Wow, that's good to know. I mean, we can put a link in our notes to it too, because that sounds really fascinating. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, because I know you spoke to the value of having a couple in front of you, 2 people versus 1. Do you still see clients individually? And what would you say are some of those key differences that might occur in that work, an individual client versus couple?
Yeah, I do see individuals still. I would say I'm probably a 70-30 split. So 70% is couples, the others are individuals. Mm-hmm. And honestly, a lot of my individuals are female. Now I think about it. I only have a couple individual males. But the work is different. It's not slower. Again, like with couples, there's just so much more energy in the room. So if I'm working with a depressed individual, that can be a challenge for me. Because it requires me to stay in the depression with them for a bit. And I don't like that. So that's actually why I don't see a lot of that. I limit myself because I know the room I have, but, I'm trying to, I think more in the individual work, I'm working on being a temporary attachment figure, for them. And so I use myself as a way to navigate relationship and repair with the relationship the client and I make. And so that's where the work is a little different. I still have to try that on in the couples work, but again, I get to use their significant other, who's going to be much more effective than I ever would be.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't asked you about EFIT. I mean, is that like a newer addition to the emotionally focused therapy, the emotionally focused individual therapy? I got that book too. Ashley Marie and I have been like going through it and stuff. But um, do you utilize that process, and how does that kind of compare to the EFT couples therapy?
Yeah, so a lot of the same interventions are used within EFIT. I'm not an expert on EFIT, the emotionally focused individual therapy. I gravitate more towards Brown and Elliott have an attachment model and framework that I follow a little bit more succinctly with individuals, where they're doing a lot more, like in the EMDR work, it's called resourcing. Doing a lot of that internal resourcing and reparenting
Yeah.
with the individual. So it's not a knock on EFIT. I didn't learn it. It is newer to the emotionally focused kind of family. And it really is like if you just want some dirt. Framework it's really, before Sue died, Sue Johnson, it was really kind of her taking back, because there was some controversy in the development of emotionally focused couples therapy with another her professor. There's rumors that there was some research stolen and things taken. And so I think her development and really focus, because she stopped seeing couples later before she passed recently, and was really focused on the individual side. And I think that was her taking it back. I think that was her like, no, this is mine, and I'm going to this way.
Yeah, and good for her. I mean, I think I actually remember now, it's like that big giant green book in grad school. I don't know if you had that one, but LMFTs had it to study with. And it was like, I remember her name with another name was kind of the EFT model back in those days, but we'll Voldemort that for now.
It's like the Real Housewives of therapy.
Right. It's fascinating. Probably another conversation for another day. But even in the model that I have trained and practiced in, like saying just some controversies and disputes and really interesting stuff. It's like, hey, aren't we supposed to be like relational? But we're human. Hey, so
the real people, real struggles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Michael, this has been really amazing. And as we kind of come to a close, I'm wondering if there's one thing you wish people understood about men's emotional experiences and relationships. What would you say?
I think the biggest message I would have, or want people to take away, is that men have emotions. They're there. Oftentimes it can look so closed and absent. But because they are human, they have emotion. So short of sociopathic, it's just, do we create an environment where it's safe enough to have the emotion? And that's what I strive to do in the therapeutic practice. And so, yeah, and maybe that's even my own cry for myself of, I have emotion. Like, I just need help showing it, because it's been unsafe in other places. So, but yeah, I haven't met a man yet in my practice that it was truly just unfeeling.
Yeah.
Wouldn't exist.
Yeah. And as silly as it may sound, like that is like a myth that's out there that's worth busting, So I actually appreciate that you end on that note, because I wholeheartedly stand behind that and, feel really privileged to be able to see the shift that therapy and, just creating that security in a relationship can do to like allow somebody to feel and to show that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with me today. Is there anything else you want listeners to know about you? We're definitely going to drop your website link so people can find you. But anything about your practice or you that you just want to pitch or share about right now?
Yeah, I'm really excited about cocktail therapy.
Yes, the podcast. Great.
And so they can find us on socials at Cocktail Therapy Show, Cocktail Therapy Podcast. And we've done some deep dives in analyzing the show The Bear. So we make a good cocktail and we go episode by episode of The Bear and talk about the attachment disturbances within each individual character and how those are working themselves out.
That show is like so chaotic. Like, text me when you get to the Christmas episode, because I'm sure my husband listens with me.
I think that one actually just dropped. Nice. Yeah. But that Christmas scene is intense. It's funny because we're watching a show right now called The Pit, and it's like a medical ER environment. And I talked to my friends. I was like, who's a nurse? I was like, is this what it's like? Like, I watch The Bear and I'm like, oh, I get it. And I'm fine. But we've had a lot of people tell us, like, I can't watch it. It's too intense. But this medical show, I'm like, I don't know how you survive every day.
Yeah. Did your friend say that it was like?
Yeah. She was like, oh, yeah. Like,
oh, wow.
It's intense, but she understands it, can hold on to it. But yeah, the podcast I'm having a lot of fun doing. We're going to be inviting some other people to interview. So some theologians, some therapists, some bartenders. And all
quite the variety. Yeah. Honestly, it sounds so fun. I'm glad to hear you're kind of weaving in something in our profession with just really fun conversation in that pop culture piece too. I seriously get stressed out thinking about The Bear. It's like so chaotic for me. I'm like, I could not. I wouldn't.
But there's a lot of disorganized attachment in that show.
So true. Mm-hmm. Well, Michael, thanks so much for joining me. And I look forward to listening to your podcast. And thank you for everything you shared today that's helping us grow.
Absolutely. It's good to be here.